Well, welcome to another super exciting episode of Voices of Video. So we are now T minus about 5 weeks, 5.5 weeks to IBC, and the excitement is building. I am joined by three amazing companies, and today we're going to have a really, really fabulous conversation. You're going to want to stay to the end and hear everything that our group has to say, both about what they're going to be doing at IBC, what they're going to be showing, but more importantly, what they're really excited about right now in the industry. We're going to be talking about some super exciting trends. There's probably going to be, some surprises. So you definitely want to hang out. You want to listen. And as always, we thank you for hanging out and listening to Voices of Video. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel. And Dominic, why don't we start with you? Introduce yourself and the company and what you do.
Hi, thanks for inviting us again in the Voices of Video. Always good to be part of it. So I'm working for Scalstrm, a company initially developed an origin packagers, mainly for tier one operators, telco, now also for broadcasters and tier two operators and content owners. During the road, we've developed more and more products from an origin shield, CDN, slot transcoding, just-in-time transcoding, and live transcoders. And there we met run into NetInt, and that's, I think, why we're on Voices of Video. So happy to be part of it.
Awesome. Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Mark, for having me. Joe Waltzer, I'm CEO and founder of Arcadian. We're a services company. We help people in the media space, so content creators. We help them reach their customers in sort of efficient, exciting, technology-focused ways. So thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And Will.
Hey, Mark, likewise. Thanks for having us on. So I work at Akamai. I think people traditionally know Akamai as a CDN. But today we're a cybersecurity company, a compute vendor, and a CDN. But the CDN is only about a third of our business nowadays. So we really evolved to be larger. But we still use, for all three of those, we use our very large distributed nature to be a great cybersecurity vendor and a compute vendor as well as delivering content. I work in the cloud technology group. I specialize on the media side. I also work at IETF, W3C, SVTA in the standards orgs, working on different standards for interop within the industry.
Yeah, it's very important work that you all are doing. So thank you for joining us. So, I think I'd like to start our conversation here. It's easy to sort of go deep into technologies, into our products, into the platforms, and that's certainly a relevant discussion, right? But let's up level and let's start with talking about why media companies are transforming their architectures. And, Joe, I think you've got a really good perspective on this, based on what you're doing for large studios, large content owners, vertically integrated media companies, who are really under pressure right now to diversify their revenue, grow their revenues. So, tell us, what are they building? What are they having you build? What are they thinking about in order to, to continue to grow their business and compete?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's an interesting time. So one of the big questions we get, one of the big asks is, how do we reach more customers, right? So I think a lot of people feel like we've sort of solved, that first streaming thing. Netflix came out and all of the other clones came out, and those are all fairly well standardized. And now we're seeing Tubi and so other big players sort of broaden the reach. And now as the studios are sort of seeing all this growth and seeing all of these opportunities as they expand to new markets, expand to new countries, new territories, they're realizing that their assumptions about how to deliver to those users isn't the same as, in the States and in places like Europe. So they're They're trying to find ways to be really efficient and really smart with how they deploy their content, and sort of stepping away from these older school models where they just outsource everything and just worry about making content. So we're seeing a lot more companies bring the tech in-house, bring in people who know and understand how to deliver content to users and do things like that. And we're getting a lot of questions about how do we save money and how do we deliver things as efficiently as possible? How do we reach those users in the countries that don't have our content yet and we want them to have our content, right? So that's probably our biggest discussions. That's probably the biggest thing we deal with now, is the best way to get this content. We're talking usually about back catalog content, right? I think everyone understands how to stream Spider-Man and Superman and all those things. But when you start digging into your catalog and you have this content that isn't quite as valuable, doesn't quite have the same broad reach, that you have to find more specific uses, you really have to be good about your margins and your efficiencies and how you get that to customers. You can't really waste. You just can't waste any money there because the margins go away. So a lot of questions about how do we really get really efficient, really dig down and get this content in everyone's hands and make some money. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Will, I think Akamai probably has some interesting experience, to bring here, because transforming, as you said, at this point, I think it's a third of your revenue is CDN. Which is pretty remarkable, because maybe there's some listeners who still think of Akamai as like maybe 2/3 would be CDN or even a higher percentage. So as you have, expanded your offering, especially around the connected cloud, what are media companies coming to you for? You're still carrying a lot of traffic. 1/3 of Akamai's revenue is still a big number. So, it's still a lot of traffic. But, how does this look for Akamai?
You should say, why should Akamai expand? Firstly, I think I get asked that question all the time, and a lot of it is to do what Joe just said. Everyone's looking for efficiencies. If people haven't noticed, delivery has become commoditized. It's no longer special, right? It's priced per gigabyte. There's not a lot of bells or whistles or features. And what you've seen is a huge contraction in the number of CDN vendors. 3 of the largest 6 have gone bankrupt in the last 3 years. That's how tight the market is in the CDN side. So you have to be incredibly efficient in delivering video. There's more and more volume of video, and the marginal cost of each new video deliver decreases, right? There's just a flood of it. So CDNs have to become extremely efficient. And as a result of that, the growth rate's not high. So Akamai says, well, how can we naturally leverage the assets we have, which is a highly distributed network? Well, video has to come from somewhere. It has to come from an origin. So why don't we go vertically into the compute and origin space? And then why don't we protect the content on the outside? Which is crime, unfortunately, is the only thing growing faster than the internet. So that explains sort of the expansion. What we see for media workloads on compute, and these are the fastest growing part of our business, is media on our compute servers. Because we have a very high egress capacity combined with this edge-based compute. And that's the sweet spot for media, right? Media is a heavy workload. You don't want to move it around further than you need to. So being able to execute close to where you deliver from and be able to get media in and out at a low cost, at a predictable price, and efficiently on a global scale, I think that's the attraction. So we're seeing big pickup there. The other thing that's especially interesting for our users is they have a lot of peak workloads, especially live stream encoding. An event comes, 3 or 4 hours, goes away, doesn't happen for a week or a month. And if you have to invest the capex to go buy an encoder that's only being used 3 hours a week, it's tremendously inefficient, right? But you can come and get a VM and start encoding, and you can have it for a day, and then you can give it back. So you only pay for what you need, and that makes much more sense. So it's the story of OpEx, both on the customer side and also on the CDN side, curiously enough. Like, we focus on keeping our OpEx low so that our prices are reasonable, so that our customers can have good OpEx when they consume our service.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's similar, like we see it as well. Also on the origin side before the CDN, the whole chain before, we see the similar, like cost and total cost of ownership. These are these days way more important than 10 years ago. And then this is also, I think, where we come in and work closely together with Akamai, because the platform runs on the Akamai connected cloud, and we can run in any edge close to the customer, and then from there we can get the signal, transcode it in all the ABR formats, and just repackage it in the right format and deliver it to the CDN. And then this can be a 24/7 channel, but also event-based channels. And then this I think ties into Will's comment, like, you don't need to have an encoder standing there for a week and then just use it for 3 hours.
Right.
Just spin it up when you need it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, we're really excited to have dedicated hardware in Akamai. Scalstrm. I know Dominique, you guys take great advantage of that. Arcadian is able to then build services, and for really the first time, the whole promise of the hybrid cloud is actually now, if you really think about it, possible, because everything broke down, as is usually the case. Things in theory, look perfect, right? But then in actual practice and application, it gets more complicated. And so the whole idea of being able to quote flex into the cloud is great as long as you're only using commodity software on CPU, and so then you could have your own data center, maybe flex into the cloud, or sometimes even go the opposite way, for certain types of applications. But now, with this edge network, you get that benefit of very, very high efficient video processing, video encoding, hardware that's sitting right on the CDN, that's able to do all kinds of interesting things in real time. And that opens up a lot of very, very interesting architectural opportunities. Dominique, one of the things I know when you go to the Scalstrm website, there's a heavy focus on ease of deployment. I think, throughout your website, on all the various pages, your marketing, your messaging, it's something that you guys really, really emphasize. And so I would love to, have you explain, what does that mean? I think everybody says their solutions are easy to deploy, but what does that mean for your customers? And then, how does that impact positively these trends of these large media companies who need more efficient ways to distribute content, both to reduce cost, but also just be able to get to market faster?
Yeah, definitely. I think probably on our website you will find 3 key differentiators. I think the first one is scalability. I think we can do many channels on one server. I think at one place we discussed it before, 48 servers with just 2. But if it comes to the flexibility, it's first of all, it's the architecture. So it's a fully microservices. So in that sense, we can deploy on-prem, on the cloud, hybrid, or in Kubernetes, or whatever. So we have the flexibility there. But the ease of use goes also into the software. So for example, if I go to, let's say, an example that we're customers that we have together with Akamai, it's an esports company, and then typically they have events that they need to spin up quickly. They use this similar setup before on a competitive platform, and for them it took hours to configure everything, to set everything right, and then press the button when the event started. When they moved to Akamai and Scalstrm together, they have an API call. They just launched one API call. Everything is set up immediately in the cloud. So we spin up the instance, we set up the channel, it's transcoded in all the ABR formats, and they're ready to go. And then these esports companies, sometimes they have events in one country. 2 hours later, they have an event in another country. And then in this way, they can spin it up really easily. And this makes it quite efficient. And of course, it's also valid for tier 1 operators. For them, if it's easy to use, they need less people on the operations side, or perhaps not less, but in a more efficient way, and they can spend more time on other things. So I think it's a really important factor, and it ties into the cost as well.
Interesting.
Akamai took a bet on NetEnt last year because CDN compute vendors typically don't want to deploy custom hardware because it's not portable, right? And you have to make decisions ahead. A year ahead, you have to buy hardware, install it, say in Singapore, and then find out, oh, the market demands in Rio de Janeiro. But there's no way you can move the streams to Singapore. That's not cost effective. So we're always hesitant. But we looked at the media market and we decided that the VPUs offer such a compelling density benefit for encoding that there was no way we could put these in and people would not buy them. I think Scalstrm are evidence of that, and we have other customers as well. So the fact that you can, if you go back, say 4 or 5 years to IBC or NAB, and you wanted to go look at an 8K encoder, it was this 4U device that was warming up somebody's booth. You could sit on it, you could have a campfire, and now you can go get a VM, and you can, 5 minutes later, you can start doing 2 8K encodes on one Quadra T1U VPU. Yeah. That's incredible differentiator. And the other part of it that we're excited about is minutes encoded per watt. The power efficiency of VPUs is not something we've mentioned, but there's the environmental side, which is we can't buy clean power everywhere. So we want to minimize the dirty power we have to buy in data centers. And then it's also our largest operating expense is electricity. So if we can help our customers produce minutes of video by using less electricity, it's lower cost all around. And it's an awesome environmental message at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, the energy factor is really important. And I think for, perhaps for a lot of listeners, primarily we have engineers that are listening to Voices of Video and, or engineering leaders. And to a certain extent, it's understandable. Obviously, they're conscious of how much energy or power their solutions require, but it's sort of it's a couple ticks away from what they're not writing the check. It's not directly hitting their budget, and in some cases, if they're running on a public cloud or on some someone else's infrastructure, there really isn't a direct correlation. They really don't see it. And so it's easy to, I'll use the expression, kick the can down the road with power. But I think we can all agree, and I've not met anyone in the industry who would dispute this, is that kicking the can down the road is not solving the problem. Saying it's this public cloud's issue to solve, or it's this platform's issue, and I'm going to let them deal with it. That's not a solution, not only for the environment, which the environmental impact is real, but I was talking to someone yesterday who runs a very large network in Europe. And they're in Amsterdam, is one of their major data center locations. And in the Netherlands, I mean, there's just I believe it's a moratorium. There are no more data centers that can be built, none. So therefore, you need to upgrade your capacity. You need more space. What are you going to do? And, in this case, dedicated hardware and just more efficient solutions are the only way, to expand your data center capacity. And, I think those are things that, sometimes we're not in the industry always directly aware of, but, we should be, and it's important to note.
It's definitely on the sustainability side. I think we see it all over in RFPs that sustainability and eco-friendly is way more important these days.
That's right. Yeah.
A lot of our clients are asking for the same thing, like how do we be more environmentally friendly? How does this impact? All those things that matter to them and their customers.
That's interesting, Joe, because you're dealing primarily, I believe, with US based, studios, kind of Hollywood. And are they operating their own infrastructure, or are they going into colos, or are they using clouds, or what does the architecture look like for them?
I find most of them are in the cloud right now. There was a big surge, probably 10, 15 years ago or somewhere around there, where cloud was the big deal because it scaled really well. It was easy to stand things up, and we all know the advantages of cloud. And I think they all want to stay in the cloud and they want to keep those advantages. I think Will, said, hey, you don't want to buy an encoder that's going to, use for 3 hours. You might as well rent some. So the cloud will be there forever. But a lot of them, as they get more efficient and try to reach, again, more customers and sort of deploy their infrastructure in more places, are finding that they want to bring it on-prem. And a lot of them have minimal infrastructure that they're sort of expanding. We get a lot of requests for how do we sort of repatriate some of this into our data centers, into our stuff. And one of the reasons we can do that is because things are just getting more efficient, right? It's cheaper, it's easier. You don't have to buy really, really expensive hardware to do transcoding, right? You can buy a fairly cheap box and put a VPU in it, and it doesn't cost you that much. And it does a lot of what they're doing now. And unless you're dealing with something that's really high demand and really large volume, there isn't a whole lot of reason to do that in the cloud. You can transcode your VOD catalog pretty easily on a couple of PCs in your data center. And when they start realizing that, they start asking questions about how do we sort of make that happen. And then the cloud is always their backup because, they all think they have a volume and they understand their volumes, but then some big rush will come in. And so the cloud will always be there. I don't think anyone thinks the cloud's going away, but we're getting a lot of questions again about efficiency and how do we make this work for us in a way that sort of gets us to where we need to be as far as cost. Yeah, it's one of our biggest questions for sure.
There's a lot of analogies to hybrid cloud. People ask, is it cloud all the time or not? And one is to your own car. So if you think about it, your car is super expensive, say $50,000 for a car. And like me, my car is sitting in the garage, unused most days, and maybe I go on a 20-minute ride. So clearly, having a ride share where a car just arrives, takes me somewhere, and drops me off is much more efficient for me. But if you're a taxi driver and you're driving all day, then ride sharing your car, renting it, is expensive. So that's a use case for owning it. So there's certainly media workflows that Joe just elucidated that should not be in the cloud. They're much more efficient being in your own data center, and they're typically going to run constantly. They're a baseline load.
Yep.
But as soon as you have variability or have peakiness or sparse consumption of an asset or a resource, that's where you want to move to cloud-based utility.
Then I think you can even go more in detail because we also see use cases that even functionality within the platform are split. Hey, for example, if you have live channels, this is quite static. You don't get extra channels every year or every day. So this is typically then deployed on-prem. But for example, like VOD streaming or VOD packaging or server-side ad insertion, there are services that are way more peak events or and so on. And these functions are then in these cases deployed in a cloud, that you have a kind of hybrid setup. So sometimes it's even within the same platform that functionalities are split between on-prem and cloud.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we see that a lot. What can we repatriate? What makes sense to repatriate? What should stay in the cloud?
Correct. Yeah.
Always slicing little pieces out and trying to figure out where we get the most efficiency. But it's becoming very.
The cloud's also a really good place to experiment with new technology, right? Because you don't know if you want to spend the money on buying. But in the cloud, you can go rent it, try it out. What's the latest? Maybe decide, that speech to text works. This one's terrible. This AI agent is awful. But you can, the cloud gives you immediate access to new tech in a much lower barrier than if you had to fully invest in everything, try it out, decide you don't like it, and then try to sell it.
Yeah, it's great for development too. We use it a lot as a sort of a dev place where all of our developers can have their own machines and all this stuff. Because again, when you're developing that application for the first time in a data center, you can't buy or you don't want to buy a bunch of hardware and punch holes in your data center and give all these developers access while they sort of build out these solutions. So we use the cloud a lot for, hey, let's stand up the architecture up here, make it work in the cloud, and then we can port it to sort of more a production data center environment. So the cloud's fantastic for development, for research, for figuring things out. We use it a lot for that.
Yeah, amazing. So Joe, you're in a interesting position because I think it's fair to say, you are largely acting as an integrator. Is that
sure? Yeah.
Sort of how you would characterize? I know, and again, when you say I'm an integrator, that can mean so many different things.
Yeah,
right?
For sure. Absolutely.
So there's a question here behind this, but just to make sure I'm framing it correctly. So, you are partnering with your customers, with these large studios to deploy technologies, build platforms, even operate platforms. we went through a time where, just out of, and Will, you're in from the very beginning of, you've been involved in the industry and building technologies, and, everything had to be built. I mean, there just really weren't that many commercial solutions, and the commercial solutions weren't maybe mature enough. So a lot of organizations build on open source projects, and then came kind of the early deployments of the cloud and the SaaS platforms. And I'm thinking even of like the OVPs, if we remember those online video platforms. We can all think of some of the OGs who, sadly, some of those companies have come and gone, even. But, so then everybody thought, oh, I don't want to build anything, and I certainly don't want to operate it. So I'm going to go to an OVP, and an OVP was valuable for a season, and then we went through kind of another migration where then the commercial solutions got more mature, and people kind of went, wait, I kind of want to choose the best encoders, but then I want to, maybe I want to develop my own packager, but I want to have, this other component that I, and so the point in that story, in this, preamble, is that, we've gone through this very interesting journey of how workflows are built, what they consist of, what the legacy is. I'm really curious, the question for you, Joe, is where are we today? Are we in a build? Are we in a buy? Are we in some, combination? What are people both wanting to do and then actually doing? Because sometimes that can be a different thing too. I can want to buy something, but maybe I have some need, I have to build it, or vice versa.
Yeah, I think it's probably more hybrid than it was before, where most people, when I started, were just sort of licensing technology and then using that to do their distributions, and they would buy a platform essentially. And today that's still there. It's certainly low risk, right? Developing stuff is expensive. Building a team to develop stuff is isn't very cost efficient, especially at the beginning. There's a lot of upfront before you see any results. So a lot of my clients, when they start, want to start with sort of a white label solution. Let's go license something. Let's build some integration points maybe here and there to get our stuff working with their stuff, and let's just launch the service, because time to market is obviously quicker too.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of people did for a long time, because the economics made sense. Because when you're streaming these big movies and the people are watching them in the millions, it's easy to make those numbers work. And I think now, as we're seeing distribution sort of spread out, those economics don't quite work, and the prices you have to pay to fully license all of your tech, and they just don't work for some of these movies from the 80s and 70s, and just stuff that's sort of sitting in the back catalog. So they're looking at new ways to do it. And we're getting this hybrid approach where we're doing a lot of integrations with lots of different partners who provide very specific pieces. And a lot of it is, where do you want to put your risk? Do you want to, where can you tolerate the most risk as far as failures in technology, right? So if you're doing a live service and you're streaming live stuff, you want to keep that in the cloud. You want to keep that with a known provider. That's a risk, because if that goes down in the middle of your production, your service isn't going to have a very good time, right? So we have a lot of discussions about, hey, what can we offload on-prem and build for you and integrate with different partners and save you money, and where can we not manage the risk, and where do we have to have proven technology partners that can deliver? We know they can deliver. We don't have to test them out, and then we can get you to market as quick as we can. So it's hybrid again. I think there's a lot of people just having conversations about what to bring in house, what makes sense, and those are complicated conversations, which is why we've had a lot of them lately, because. But when you did the OVP, you just called someone there, and you could have a couple of people, and you could do the deal, and there you were done. You didn't have to hire a team to make that work. You could hire, a few people to get that done. And now, when they're building their own internal solutions, the teams get larger, the knowledge gets a little bit more technical. You have to build, you have to hire a much larger team to make that work, and it works out when you do the numbers, but it's a complicated task. You have a lot of old school people who still like the old way, where it was simple and easy. They just had to sign some deals and someone else ran it for them. And now you have these sort of new generation coming up that wants to build it and help out. And they're all sort of come together, and they're trying to figure it all out. And it's very different. Everyone does it a little differently, but those are the conversations we're having.
Yeah. And Dominique, so it strikes me that you then sort of almost sit a little bit in the middle, right, of being a managed platform, but then also having the software blocks, the modular pieces, the applications, right, that somebody could could deploy. What do these trends look like, for your business and for where you see things are going? Are you becoming more of a platform? Are you becoming more of, kind of a modular approach? Are you building more bespoke because that's the requirements as you engage, with more customers? What?
Yeah. No, it's actually a very good question, and the answer is not that easy. So we're a software company. We deliver software, and let's call it products or solutions in different areas like packaging, transcoding, Shield, that's our core focus. Of course, sometimes we see content owners or smaller customers typically don't have the experience to do everything in-house, and then they come to us like, can you do a managed service for us? So, and then it depends a bit on the use case. So if it's a simple setup, then often we do the managed services. But for larger projects, we typically rely on partners because we're a software company. We try to focus on where we are strong at, and then we want to keep building on this, and then not focus on areas where other companies might be much better on than us. So if you say, do I need to draw a line? Then we're a software company. We're not managed services. Do we? Sometimes case by case we might do it, but that's not the default. And then, also our products, they kind of evolve a bit along what our customers demand, and then also in this road, because typically if customers want a managed service, they want an end-to-end solution. And then let's say if you go back 3 years in time, we could deliver the origin or the packager, and that's about it. We had a lot of products around it, but we couldn't do the encoding, the transcoding, and so on. So lately, in the last 2 to 3 years, we spent a lot of effort on delivering transcoding as well. Initially, VOT offline transcoding, then VOT just-in-time transcoding. Now also live transcoding for 24/7 channels or just-in-time channels. And then now we can deliver kind of an end-to-end chain. Like if you take this esports company, I think there you can consider that we're a kind of managed service partner. Although the customer has a lot of experience and technical knowledge in-house, so also they take a lot of the management of the platform on their end. But
Sure.
That's a bit case by case, I would say.
Yeah, understand. And Will, it strikes me that Akamai is infrastructure as a service, largely. How are you partnering then with the, let's call it the application layer? Because I think one of the challenges, and I can just even imagine that there's somebody, more than one person, I'm sure, who's listening to this discussion right now and says, wow, absolutely, I would love more efficient ways to encode my video. Wow, it would be amazing to get away from the high egress cost of public cloud and some of the other, cost factors around the traditional public cloud. So I would love to, consider Akamai. But, I basically have a workflow that is a combination of I'm buying pieces. Maybe my other provider, my other platform is able to bring kind of a more of an end-to-end or a complete solution. So what do I do? So how is Akamai looking at this in terms of providing more solutions to make it easier for someone to adopt?
If you've followed Akamai back since 1998 and media, there was a point probably in about 2010 where we were trying to build every solution you could possibly need in the media space.
I remember those years.
Social media, it had orange everywhere, and we had a big diagram, and we had all these blocks, and we were intent on filling in all the blocks. So you could do satellite ingest, you could do encoding, transcoding, speech, ad insertion, pretty much all the stuff Scalstrm does today, plus more, and had players, and we were trying to do it all. And we did not succeed in doing every little bit of it. We did part of it. And the challenge there is if you do part of it, your customers are still forced to go out and fill the blocks in, right? They're forced to become what Joe is, which is a systems integrator. Or they have to put pieces together. So our new approach, I think, is far more sustainable. We want to sell infrastructure. We want to sell a place for you to run compute workloads. And then we partner with companies who are much better at doing the things that we tried to do, like Scalstrm being an example. So we have a whole environment. We have a program of these trusted partners. People are known to work well on our platform, are integrated, who offer support for getting up on our platform. And when you combine these together, yes, you can start now, have all the pathways you want from a media workflow that might be an off-the-shelf end-to-end solution in a public cloud. You can now recreate that, but in a far more flexible way.
Yep.
I'm also seeing a trend. I think if you know the CDN space, multi-CDN has been a thing for 10 years. It makes a lot of sense. Not every CDN is perfect all the time. And as the cost goes down, I get more CDNs and I combine them as a system and I get reliability out of that group. And this is how CDNs work today. I think the same is going to work for cloud infrastructure. People are very much monocloud today, and there's a risk that cloud can have a problem. It's not the best all the time everywhere. And workloads have been sticky. Cloud providers try to hook you with a solution. Maybe it's the database entry, or maybe it's backup or storage or cold storage that only they have. So now you're stuck with them, and then they can raise egress fees, and you're still stuck with them. So people are starting to design cloud solutions for portability. Basically, if it's Kubernetes, that's all I want. I will take care of everything myself. And now I have the freedom to both port it for price, but more importantly, duplicate it for reliability. So I can run in 3 clouds, the same code, the same software. They're all well encapsulated, and I get higher overall product reliability from that than I do running it in a single cloud. So I see that as a definite trend, and that's something Akamai is trying to accommodate. It's very easy to enter our cloud solution. It's very easy to leave it, but we think that is the future of cloud.
Yeah, we're really happy to be working with Akamai because one of the very practical hurdles that we ran into, and I think every hardware vendor runs into this, is it's relatively easy. Actually, it's very easy to ship a card. I mean, our VPUs are U.2 PCIe. You say, hey, what's your office address? Okay, ship it here. You ship it. Somebody goes in the lab, they open a machine, they pop it in, they run some, they start testing it, right? So we found it was very easy to kind of get through the initial, I'd call it the validation phase. Validation, like, does this thing actually produce quality that's even remotely acceptable? Which is the very first thing, regardless of software or hardware and encoder, like you have to validate it. And then, of course, there's a lot of much more stringent tests that follow. But where we ran into just incredible hurdles, and with the largest streaming services, where you would assume like, oh, surely they have multiple labs, they have, sort of walled gardens, or, they're prepared to do this level of testing. And we found that they weren't. They weren't. And so when it came time to be like, hey, we like your quality, and we'd be like, awesome. So now, like, let's get into a POC. And they're like, we don't know how to do that. Like, we literally don't have a way to do it, and this happened time and time. And, and after a while you sort of scratch your head and go, wow, okay. So it's really great to have, a network like Akamai, where it's sitting right there. You can easily spin up a VM, like you say, Will. It is so easy to access, and this will be the extent of sort of my my sales pitch, my plug in this particular episode. But really, if anybody's listening and you've just wanted to dabble, you're intrigued, but it's like, okay, I've tested in my lab, but I kind of actually want to put some streams like sort of through the network, maybe not fully in production, but it's easy to do it. And I know Akamai, is very generous, even with, I think, a little bit of, initial help there. But So, Will, I am curious about a topic that I know is near and dear to your heart. You spend a lot of time talking about media over QUIC, and low latency and live. And there's something that there's a trend that clearly is occurring, and that is the old days of sort of I run a VOD workflow, and then I have my live, so I sort of have these two systems running. It appears to me, and so I'm asking a question here, are we seeing a convergence where really streaming is just moving to effectively a live topology? What are what are you seeing? And then, I'll let you then talk more about, a little bit of your work around, mock and, low latency and things like that. But
yeah, I mean, the media over QUIC is interesting. Media over QUIC is the most interesting evolution I've seen in media delivery in the last 15 years. It's adaptive segmented media was the big change in 2010. And now we're starting to see leveraging QUIC. And why is QUIC different? QUIC has parallel streams, as many as you want. You can have 100, 1,000, and datagrams as your transport layer. And then over that, we have a pub-sub distribution system that can move payloads. And one of the payloads that's efficient at moving in is media payloads. So we're building a solution. And video, if you think about it, the encoder is producing video in this perfect order, right? It's the iframes and p frames, and they're coming out. Yeah. And then we cut them into little blocks. We throw them in a big box. They lose their order. We write a text file to tell you how to recreate the order. We throw that over the wall. The player reads the text file, pulls the objects, and tries to resequence them, and then sends it to the decoder. Whereas media over QUIC is far more direct. We just take the bytes as they're coming out of the source, and we push them to the subscriber. So it's a natural match to how live media works. But if you only use it for real-time media, in other words, to duplicate the conversation we're having now, which it's very good at, by the way, and you're going to see a lot of demos coming out, and I can show them if anyone's interested at the next trade show. But it's tunable latency because we combine the live with caching. So if you want to play 5 seconds behind live or 15 seconds behind live, you can retrieve it from the relay's cache. And if you want to play VOD, you can think of it as infinite caching, or it's content that is never going to change. So VOD is just on the continuum of live, but it's right at the end to the point. It looks no different to a live stream that's finished. I've archived it, and now I'm playing it back. So economically, if the same distribution network can serve all those types of content, absolute real time, sub 200 millisecond, 500 to 1.5 second interactive live, and then higher live as well as VOD, now we can monetize the bytes coming out of that across the infrastructure, and it's cheaper for everybody. So I think I'm particularly interested in media over QUIC and its ecosystem of new streaming formats, new encryption formats, new authentication and token usage formats, because it's all combined. I think it's quite an exciting departure from where we are today.
Yeah, I'm happy that you gave that preview, because I know that everywhere you go, you take every opportunity. It feels like, anyway, maybe not literally, but to evangelize.
I was not going to discuss media
to evangelize media over QUIC, and it's something that I guess I'm curious about as we look at as architectures are changing and systems are being built differently. Does it open up? So this, I'd be curious to get your comments on this.
To be careful, it's not curing everything. People are going to carry on using HLS and Dash because their business is running just fine, and the end consumer doesn't care what the protocol is. They see a block of rectangle, and if that works more reliably and at a better price than some other newfangled thing, no company is ever going to adopt it. So Mock has to offer a compelling benefit to even make its way into the future. And I'll be very clear about that. It has to, and I think the benefits will start with real time and they'll expand, but it's not going to be an immediate conversion by any means.
Okay. Yeah.
Economics is king for all our businesses.
That's right. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. Well, this is great. I know we could keep talking. We all collectively bring, so many deep experiences in the industry and, technology and in the business. But maybe we can wrap up here, with a little bit of closing thoughts. And I think one of the things that just naturally happens, we all attend conferences, we listen to panels, we listen to discussions, like this one. And, it's easy to listen and say, wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I'd really like to take action on that. I'd like to consider, something in my own business and my own workflow. But then, the question always is, but I'm saddled with all this legacy and I'm locked into, agreements with vendors or agreements with cloud providers or whatever. And so there can sometimes feel like I really want to, be innovative, but I'm kind of stuck. What sort of, tips or hints or, what sort of advice would you give somebody who's listened to this last 45 minutes or so and, is saying, wow, that's amazing. But now how do I transform? What can I do with this?
I think
any insights?
Yeah, I think start small. If you have an existing platform and you want to test out new stuff, you don't need to throw everything away and start from scratch. Of course, yeah, it's good for our business, but typically it doesn't work like that. But you can start small. You can start using or change bits and pieces, and for example, event-based channels, move them to a new platform, move them to the cloud. If it works fine, it will work fine, and then I join or move other stuff to the cloud or on-prem, or even you can reuse existing hardware because you can gradually move stuff to other platforms, reuse the existing hardware for another component. So if you say I'm stuck with my existing platform or contracts, you can always be innovative and add functionality like, I don't know, add insertion or just-in-time packaging where you say, okay, I want to save storage space, remove all the lower profiles on storage, do the repackaging on the fly from these profiles. So I don't think there's an excuse to not innovate.
Yeah, I would say Dominique stole my first response, but my second thing would be just go ask people. Go to a conference and just ask questions, because one of the great things about this industry is there's a lot of passionate people. I love what I do. I love talking about what I do. I love hearing from other people in the industry and having these kinds of conversations where new things come up, where new technologies are discussed, when new opportunities are presented. And I think that maybe you think people won't be very forthcoming, but I think you'll be surprised that some people they'll give you the secret sauce and they'll tell you what they're doing and how they do it and why it's special. And maybe they will try to sell you their service, but at the end of the day, I think most people will just say, hey, this is what I think. This is your problem. This is how I would approach it. Hey, maybe you should talk to this company. This is their solution. It might be a little better than my solution. I think the industry is very open to just having great conversations because everyone's situation is different. Everyone has a different issue, slightly different ways they need to solve their problem and just different realities. And I think that just having that conversation and just go to a conference, walk to a booth, it might have the solution that you might need, and just go talk to somebody there and just start having a talk. I think you'll learn a lot. You'll find out a lot, and you'll start finding some solutions to your problems and having some ideas of what to do next.
And my advice is slightly different. I would tell people is sit down and think, because how we make video is changing under our feet. And there's an existential threat to all four companies in this webinar right now, which is if I go to Facebook Reels and I flick through it, I would say today, 50% of the videos I look at were not encoded. They were made by AI, right? Those did not pass through any type of encoder. There was no media workflow. There was no production system behind them. It was servers in a server farm from, you name it, AI vendor, making video. And that's already 50% of what I'm consuming. So next year, that will be 75 or 80%. Very, very quickly, only a few % of the video, the minutes we watch, are actually encoded by the industries we all work for. And I find that, on one hand, a scary proposition, right? Because that's a threat to our business. On the other hand, it's an opportunity. If that's how video is made, how do we participate in that production?
Yeah.
And right now it's short form content, but that's just a limitation of how fast our computers are. Eventually that will expand to a full movie. You want a custom movie with exactly the people like you like in the setting you want, with the theme and the prop and the story and the language. It'll just be made for you. And it won't be made by the products and services we're all selling today. So I certainly don't have an answer to this, but I think it's the question worth addressing.
Yeah.
And that's what I would encourage people to do today, is think of that environment and then think how you win if that's how we make video.
Yeah. Yeah, amazing insights. Well, we live in super exciting times. I don't think anybody would debate that. And things are changing fast, but a lot of opportunities. So with that, thank you very much, gentlemen. It was a wonderful conversation. Really, I enjoyed it. I'm sure our listeners did too.
Have a great time. Thank you, Mark. Thanks,
Yeah.
Thanks, Dominique.
Awesome. And I just want to I just want to close with this. Again, at IBC, if you are attending IBC, make sure to stop by the VPU ecosystem booth. So it is the NetInt booth, but a lot of the branding says VPU ecosystem. All of these companies, Scalstrm, Arcadian, Akamai, and there's going to be a few others that are joining us there, are going to be there doing demos, talking. It's just going to be a really, really great opportunity. We're running a mini conference in the booth. So we also have sessions. And again, all of the companies represented here today are going to be speaking. So just a tremendous opportunity, not only to learn about what VPUs can do for you, but also what these companies are doing in general, even outside of VPUs, just in video. So make sure that you look us up if you're in Amsterdam. And with that, we thank you again for listening. Be safe, be well.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Bye.